So, what I want to talk about today is the mindset. So, at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is all about mindset, and it takes uh, years to build that mindset. And since you guys are young, if you can start thinking about that mindset today, I'm sure it is going to help each and every individual who is there on this conference today to know what they could do. Before I move to the mindset, I mean, there are enough and more questions, which is that whether Silicon Valley is a location or it's something else, and how do you really adapt the Silicon Valley mindset? And when I mean here, I'm just kind of restricting my presentation or discussion to the entrepreneurship or the startup founders mindset. So one of the key things which I have personally observed is the mindset is a top-down approach. So what do I mean by that is that if a problem is looked upon from a global perspective, and if someone wants to really solve that problem, it has to be solved in a very simple manner. So if the problem is not solved in a simple manner, it cannot reach out to make an impact to the global world. So if you see any innovation which came from Silicon Valley, whether it is Airbnb or Uber or some of the tech companies, Facebook, etc., etc., so the larger thing which we've been talking about, all of them had the same mindset, which is a top-down approach, try to see a problem from a very large global perspective and make it very simple to solve. And if someone is able to achieve that, then it becomes very easy to then kind of deep dive into how do you solve that. So one of the thing as you guys could have kind of thinking about many ideas every day, the ideas would kind of emerge into you. You need to kind of think about that. How do you solve that? The other thing which I noticed is that an entrepreneur has to be a storyteller. Why it matters a lot. So it does matters if you are able to articulate that this is the problem you are solving and this is how you'll be able to solve. And it is just not to attract investors, but also to attract the employees who are going to come and work for you, the customers who are going to use your solution or the product which you are selling, or it might also be the partners you want to sign up in future for the same business. So therefore, all you have to do is try to learn that how do you tell your story in a manner where even a very unknown a person who doesn't know anything about the topic is able to understand that. The third thing which I would want to talk, and there are like 7 or 8 points which I would now want to build on top of the mindset and the storyteller, is that these are some of the things which you should start thinking if any one of you are looking at becoming an entrepreneur. Is what does the unit economics work? Unit economics in a very simple terms in a startup language is that what is the customer willing to pay and what is the cost of acquiring or producing that product. And the margin is a unit economic. It is easier said than done. And this is the most complex thing, which although appears to be very simple, but if you now apply that to an e-commerce business like Amazon, where the margins, or they were burning cash for like almost 15 years, or if you see at any other business which is heavily IP driven, or it needs regulatory approval, if you are into the healthcare sector, then the unit economics really differ. So depending upon the kind of business you are, you need to really figure it out what are this thing until what time you will be doing the cash burn. And therefore understanding and having a grip about a unit economic is very critical. I have come across many founders who from an academic perspective have done PhDs in their subject. From an academic perspective, they know what their subject is. However, when it comes to business mindset, they failed miserably. So you need to inculcate this what you call as a unit economics habit right from the day when you're starting thinking about your business. Again, execution capabilities matters a lot. And how do you learn this? So many times I've seen that the founders who are young, who want to just come and change the world, the ideas are really good, the thought process is also good, the qualification is also right, but most of the startups fail because of the lack of founders' ability to execute well. And this has to be learned. This cannot be kind of taught. And the better way to do this is try to do anything which you're doing, whether it is an office project, or you're doing an internship, or you're doing just the community services. You need to figure it out, that are you the one where people can rely on you, and you will be able to execute the project the way you have envisaged, or always kind of have proven or given a better result in the execution. The next is the understanding about what customer needs. People have spent billions of dollars and burnt billions of dollars and realized that what they were been building was not what the customer wants. And trying to know what customer needs at as soon as possible or as early as possible is something which will define the success of a startup. It is, if the startup is too slow, the investors, at least in the valley, are, excuse me, not keen to invest into those founders. So what they call is fail fast. Try to understand what customers want. The sooner the better. The next very critical point for all you young entrepreneurs who are looking at becoming an entrepreneur is to have a bifocal thinking. Are you building something which is for the future, or are you solving the current problem or the current need? Often you will find many competitors or many people who are doing the same thing once you start on a problem statement, which is the current problem. So it is very critical that whilst you want to solve a problem which is current, you need to think that whether that problem would be relevant even in the future, or what else you can solve once you start the first problem, and then kind of where will you end up doing that. So that bifocal thinking is very critical. Having all the founders who think similar, many times uh, friends from the same college, friends from the same community wants to start a business, and they end up doing a business. And soon they realize that all of them are thinking the same. And therefore having a diversified core team is is again one of the things which defines the success or the failure of a startup. And it is always good to see that if we can have a diversified and a balanced team right from the beginning, rather than building that at a later date, if the founder's equity or the initial equity has been distributed, and it becomes very challenging then to change that. These were some of the things which one needs to look as a startup founder, that how do one develop a startup or a business, think about it from a different perspective. However, the things start from an individual. And the next two slides, I would want to emphasize more on the individual brand. A person will be able to attract co-founders, investors, employees, and partners and customers if he is able to articulate well. We started with the personal storytelling, right? So how do you build that brand? A personal brand is also very critical, and it will be different for all different individuals. It will be different for all different personas, and therefore you cannot copy it, but you will have to kind of think about it in a manner that what works for you. So what we call in terms of a brand archetype is that what would be your personal brand archetype you want to think about. And if you look at this, this is an archetype where people have stuck, decided that this is a brand archetype I want to build or be kind of known for. And they live with this archetype for almost 20 years. I mean, this is like once decided, it is very difficult to change the persona of person's individual behavior or thought process. And therefore, you need to really decide that whether you want to leave legacy or whether you want to provide structure. Are you embracing kind of spirituality or trying to go towards that part, or you want to pursue connection? And each individual will have to decide this thing. And in the brand terms, it is said that you cannot have multiple persona, because it is going to confuse uh, the others or the people who are kind of going to look at you from that perspective. So you may say that I want to leave legacy. Then you need to decide that either I want to be a hero and prove that I'm a master of what I'm doing, or I want to be a magician showing that I'm going to change the world like what Elon Musk is doing. Or you could just be a liberator and say that I will do I would outlaw everyone and try to still leave the legacy. In Valley, particularly, there are a lot of companies who are working in containers, IT infrastructure, etc., etc. And all those things are kind of giving more towards providing structure to what they're doing. So either they say that the services are better, they're kind of ensuring that they're doing, or they're trying to prove that they have created in an innovative way, which is going to change the way people are using the product or the services today. So depending upon what is your brand archetype, you need to think now and start working on that, because it will all start from our storytelling, and then you will learn the traits of entrepreneurship. One other thing which is critical, that one will also try to see that once you develop one of this archetype about how do you want to be looked upon at, you need to see what would be your challenger archetype. This can change often depending upon how you want to tackle that situation, and you need to figure it out that whether a challenger archetype, in my terminology, the way I look at it is always a way you would want to challenge the best in the world. So if you're challenging something from the thing which you are going to build, you need to showcase your archetype that, hey, this is how I'm going to be challenging. And that is what you start communicating. That is what you start talking about. That is what you go to the forums and the communities and start presenting yourself. You could be a democratizer and then say that, hey, I'm going to take from few and give it to many. You can say that I'm a next generation, and then you'll say that, hey, this was then and what we are doing is now. You decide your challenger archetype, decide your brand archetype, and try to say that for achieving that brand archetype, I'm going to use this challenger archetype and kind of continuously kind of give that messaging from my side, which will prove that this is how I'll be able to challenge myself. I would want to make this session more for Q&A. And one of the things which I just want to do, that NG and youth, I've been working on this blog for following certain obsessions. So once people follow certain obsessions, they can think about contributing uh, and be the thought leaders in what they want to do and attract their first believers through the X future. And if any one of you is interested in kind of talking and writing more about what they believe, one could come and just kind of approach me, and I will be able to kind of give you access to what your thought process are. Some of the books I do recommend for the startup, if you are building the startup on your own, and you should read these books, which will give you a lot of perspective if you have not read these books already. Uh, if You can connect me at the avj at thexfuture.com. I have my LinkedIn there in the presentation, as well as the on ZNL Ventures. You can go and see all the portfolio startups we have invested in. And if you as NGN Youth also want to take an internship in any of our portfolio startups, do feel free to write. I will be happy to introduce you guys to the founders of the portfolio startups, who would be more than happy to kind of take any internship if they offer any internship if they have. I'm open for any questions, guys.
Thank you so much, Amit, for presenting. That was great. So our first question comes and it asks, how did you initially become strong with investing? Did you use a lot of trial and error? Did you have an algorithm? What were your initial steps?
That's an interesting question. What I did personally, so my career is that I've spent most of my career doing M&A, mergers and acquisitions. I've done a lot of transactions across the globe, and that gave me an understanding about what is happening in terms of the acquisition world. And from working with Citibank, PwC, KPMG, doing that, and then I moved on to the investment path. The initial stage when I was deciding how to invest, what I was trying to do is I was trying to follow the obsessions. So, for example, if today someone want to start investing, they can think about that we want to follow the future of work, or we want to follow the future of healthcare, or we want to follow intelligence, automation. So you pick up few themes, and you can do a lot of research initially on what are those themes, and based on those themes you start looking at startups or the leaders who've been doing that and where the investors are investing. So what I then start doing is, if you're an early stage investors, is say where the money is, you just follow the money, where the money is going, where the larger funds are investing their dollars, and then try to see where are those opportunities available within the bracket where you want to invest. And there are series of ways through which you could do. There are good publicly available databases like CB Insights. They put a lot of content around the startups and and the sectors. You can go to Crunchbase and dig that. There is something called Traction. So all these databases you can go and learn more and try to formulate uh, your square box within which you would want to kind of now go and invest. And once you have formed your thesis, you can then approach various. Many times now it comes through connects, but you can start approaching various forums where you can find those startups and then start looking at those startups. So that's a typical way in which one could build if a career if they want to kind of invest in. The other way, which I have recommended few of the young founders or the few of the young students who want to kind of look at investing, is to join. There are a lot of funds who have the fellowship. So, for example, there's something called KP Fellowship by Kleiner Perkins. Sequoia does Sequoia Scouts, and you should apply that. And they want students who are in the college who will become the scout and be part of it. So you can there are many funds who have this program, so you guys should apply to one of those programs and try to be the scout or the fellow of those funds, which will also give an ability to kind of learn more about how they invest.
Great, thank you. And another question was, what was like the moment in your life when you realized that you wanted to follow this career path? Like, what made you decide that investing and mergers and acquisitions is something you want to do?
So, mergers and acquisition was because of my kind of I chose that part to decide. So, I when I was doing my college in India, and I got an opportunity to do an internship with an organization called RSM. And at that point in time, RSM was doing the split of the Ambani brothers. So, I mean, that's a famous split in India, which is called the Reliance split. And I got the opportunity to be part of that split, and that entire, you know, 6 months to a year of that split changed my perspective about how the money flows, how things happens, and all those things. And then I kind of did not do anything else post that. And investment become a natural next step, because once you start doing this, a lot of acquisitions, you realize what the founders are building, how they're building, where could be the next exits, and that's where I naturally went into from M&A to investment. So there was a very natural thing which happened to me.
Great. And last question. So yeah, last question is Steve Jobs never believed in market research, especially how the iPhone was invented. Sometimes customers don't know what they exactly want. Is this true in the startup world? Can you become successful without market research and understanding what customers need?
Uh, it depends on what you're building and what kind of product you are there. If you know the gap, so I have known many founders who've been working in large tech organization, and then they realize that there is a gap, and they certainly know that this is a gap which I'll be able to kind of make sure that I'll come out and do it. Then you might not know the market. You don't need it because you know that there is a problem. However, it is always good to do an A/B testing. You may not want to go and really understand, build a product by knowing that this on your gut feeling, but definitely do an A/B testing. And it is very easy to do an A/B testing these days. It doesn't even cost, the cheapest could be done in $100, right? To create two different personas, two different thoughts, run an ad on LinkedIn or Insta, and you will be able to understand what people are liking or not. So A/B testing is something I would definitely recommend, even if you are very sure about what you want to build.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr.
Sure.
Amit Jain. We really appreciate it, and we're going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you for coming.